sitting at the table, just for the record, is Derek Whitten, an Assistant Ohio Attorney General. Marissa Gibson, the case agent from the Auditor's Office, State Auditor's Office, and Sam Kirk, also appointed Special Prosecutor in this case from the Auditor's Office. Your Honor, after providing discovery to Defense Counsel, we've reached the following proposed plea arrangement. As it relates to count 1, which is indicted as a felony of the first degree, the state would move, Your Honor, to amend count 1 by amending the value, so the value would be between $750,000 and less than $1.5 million, thereby rendering count 1 to be a felony of the second degree. The state understands the defendant will change his previously entered plea of not guilty and enter a plea of guilty to theft, count 1, a felony of the second degree. The state also understands, Your Honor, that the defendant will change his previously entered pleas of not guilty and enter pleas of guilty to the following counts as charged. Count 9, tampering with records, the records being income tax records. Counts 21, 31, 38, 49, 50, and 51. Those counts relate to tampering with records for falsifying zoo records belonging to the Columbus Zoo. Counts 56 and 57 are telecommunications fraud regarding using Columbus Zoo email to perpetuate a fraudulent scheme. Count 83, which is falsification, a misdemeanor of the first degree for providing false information under oath to Marissa Gibson, seated in my left. To count 61, 62, 63, which are tampering with records for falsifying records pertaining to the Dublin Irish Festival. Those are all felonies of the fourth degree. Count 65 is telecommunications fraud, a felony of the fourth degree, also pertaining to the Dublin Irish Festival. Count 82, Your Honor, is conspiracy to engage in pattern of corrupt activity as indicted, a felony of the second degree. And finally, count 88, tampering with records, that is a felony of the fourth degree. If the defendant does change his previously entered plea of not guilty to these counts, the state would ask the court to dismiss the remaining counts. Further, Your Honor, as part of the plea arrangement, the defendant has agreed to pay restitution in the amount of $675,572.65 to the Columbus Zoo. And then a portion of that also goes to the State of Ohio Department of Taxation, as well as the Internal Revenue Service. Further, Your Honor, the state has also agreed not to offer co-defendant Tom Stolf a plea arrangement containing less prison exposure than Mr. Fingerhut's. The state has agreed that it will argue and ask the court to sentence the defendant to prison, but will not offer a specified amount of years. We've also agreed, Your Honor, that the Reagan-Tokes law does not apply to this defendant, as the vast majority of the criminal conduct that occurred in count 1 and count 82 applied before the law went into effect. Further, Your Honor, the defendant has agreed to fully cooperate with the State of Ohio, any of its political subdivisions, agencies, or law enforcement agents in all matters pertaining to crimes committed at or involving the Columbus Zoo, which he is aware of, was involved in committing, pertaining to any subject matter which he has been indicted for or covered in a audit done by Plant Moran of the Columbus Zoo back in 2021. That was commissioned by the Columbus Zoo or his agents. Further, Your Honor, the defendant has agreed to testify truthfully if asked to testify in any matters pertaining to his cooperation. The defendant also agrees to waive his right to an appeal, but not limited to the grounds listed in Revised Code Section 2953.08. That's the plea arrangement, Your Honor. I expect the defendant to enter a plea of guilty to those counts and to accept the plea arrangement that we've made.
Next, Mr. Fingerhut, could you please stand for the report of the administer an oath to you?
You can raise your right
Have you ever been found mentally incompetent?
No.
The record should reflect that Mr. Fingerhut appears to be mature, alert, reasonably well educated, not under the influence of alcohol or drugs, and capable of understanding the proceedings here today. Are you presently under any type of probation, community control supervision, post-release control supervision, or parole?
No.
You understand, Mr. Fingerhut, what the word voluntary each of those two charges, I